Good morning, everyone. So today you and I are going to talk about acceptance testing. So let's get into it. First and foremost, let's talk a little bit about what acceptance testing actually is and what the main benefit of acceptance tests are. Now, this term it's a little bit loose, I'm going to be honest with you, and there are a few people who are doing it their way and so forth, but I'm just going to give you the definition that I've been taught and I've been using for a few years. And basically an acceptance test is just an automated test that is placed in order for you to simulate a user that uses your system virtually. The idea is that you have an automated thing such as, let's just pick, say, Selenium WebDriver. Basically, that it's a very common tool for that. It simulates an entire browser, and it can simulate several browsers, and so you can write an automated test that does something on your page. Now, the value to you may, when I'm now telling you this, may feel very obvious, and for the juniors out there, maybe it doesn't feel so obvious. But let me just define something for the juniors out there. The reason why this is so valuable and so extremely important especially for large companies, is because the amount of testing that is required for you to guarantee that something works when you ship it is maybe not that much. It kind of depends. A lot of companies do something that they don't even talk about, which is called risk-based testing. And the idea is basically that you simply test what you believe as a professional to have been impacted by what you do. Now, this is a little bit of a problem for some companies, and I'll touch on this in just a moment. I'll actually tell you about stories that happened just yesterday. Anywho, so that's one aspect of it. But you also have to account for as a programmer, and this is something you invite every single time you write a piece of code. Even if it's the smallest thing in the world, you always invite the possibility of you breaking something. And that is the harsh, horrible truth of writing software. And that is something that especially people who say that, oh, this is just a small thing, like they don't understand that every time you change something, you may have broken something, because they don't understand that code needs to be virtually perfect for the program to work as intended. And that is perfection is a tricky thing. And that's why having something as a QA, for example, a human or something like that, is very useful when you want to assert that something is working as intended. Now, an automated testing, I will say, is a better investment. It's a great thing to have a QA, but a lot of companies don't really put the type of money that is required into something like that. Large companies do, with a lot of manual testing, because frankly, testing an entire it's basically called regression testing. Regression testing is the idea that whenever you've changed something, you have to test all your features again in order to make sure that you didn't break something with the new feature that shipped. This is something that we did at Ticketmaster quite a bit, and I'll touch on that as well, and as to why I think integration tests are so important in certain scenarios. Now, yesterday we were talking about team processes at the company, and we have something called a hackathon, where it's a fairly popular concept since programmers spend most of their days building something that somebody else has told them to build, yours truly included. Companies who want to be a little bit hipper and trendier and leverage the innovation of the people that are in the company have something called a hackathon, where you have one or several days or something of that nature where you're free to build almost anything you want. Now, the scope usually is something along the lines of, all right, build something that is valuable to the company. I am one of those people who is a relentless pragmatist, and at my company, we don't have any acceptance tests. So I teamed up with one of my colleagues and I said, hey, you know what would be really cool? If we could build an automated test suite for our main part, like the main flows on the product, so that we don't have to double check that something broke every time or cross our fingers whenever we release something. How cool would that be? And he said, yeah, that's awesome. So we did. We built some automated tests, and then virtually, we kind of just presented it to the team and they said, yeah, that would be cool. Nobody really got the value. But what's interesting is that today, our product manager and we were talking about testing processes, and she was saying that we were basically saying that the time it will take us to test on every single mobile device and test in every browser and all of these things, that you don't think about that when you're not a professional, but the harsh truth is that if you are catering to the web, you can multiply everything you do by the number of browsers and versions as well, because if you have major release, I'd say that you support IE6, that means that you have to try IE6, IE7, like all the different versions if you want to be really sure that you're not breaking something. And some people say, it's just CSS, who cares? Well, you see, the CSS is a problem, because I've been in situations where CSS has literally caused business critical bugs. Doesn't matter if you don't think it's valuable, because the fact of the matter is that it is possible for you to break your system just using CSS. It is a fact. And this is a big problem for small companies or companies who want to be really quick and really produce, like startups that want to produce things quickly, because the PO, the product manager, wants us to be 100% sure that nothing ever breaks. They want us to test everything, but at the same time they want us to be quick, and that they can't have both. It's not possible. That's what I told my product manager. You can't ask us to do both. You can either risk that something doesn't work in production and that we have to roll back things, that's one way of doing it, or we can test absolutely everything. And that's where I kind of now, I'm being Frederick the sneaky political agenda Frederick, and I sneak in this idea. But if we have automated tests for all the main flows, then we can have our cake and eat it at the same time, because automated testing, you do those once, and for the most part, you don't have to think about it so much anymore, and you have it part of your build pipeline. How awesome is that? So now we decided that, all right, we're gonna, as quickly as possible, integrate automated testing into our business flow. Now, why is this such a hot button issue? Why are people not just doing this willy-nilly? Well, let me tell you. Acceptance testing requires a lot of maintenance, because every time you need to create an acceptance test, you also have to maintain those, which means that every time the project changes or the interface changes, you invite the possibility of breaking said test. So you have to maintain it. It's not a free thing. It's actually a very big investment depending on the size of company. But it's also very valuable in certain situations. Now, if you have a small, 3-page type of application, your own blog or whatever, don't build this. For the love of God, don't do that. This is the sort of thing that you add to your project when you have the type of size where, in order for you to be sure that everything is working and all the features are still working every time you build something or release it into production, you're spending hours to verify it, or several people are needed in order to verify it. We are, as a company, at that scale. And a Ticketmaster, for example, it was even more important, because we are talking about a system, one of the largest ticketing systems in the world, one of the largest websites in the world. And there are tons and tons of configurations. There's different countries, there's translations and internationalization. There's so many things that could in theory go wrong every time we push something to production, that in fact the release cycles before I started was, as told to me by my old colleagues, was that they would produce something and then they would have 1 to 2 weeks of just testing everything. And as you can imagine, that is a massive waste of time, all that manual testing, because it doesn't produce any value. All that testing is just to make sure that you didn't break something. So if you can have an automated way of doing that, that's a big time saver. It's a great investment. Doesn't feel like that when you first pitch it to your PO, but I'm here to tell you, if you ever have this issue at your company and your product manager tells you that, oh, you're not testing enough or you don't have enough of that and so forth, just tell them that you can either have speed or you can have quality. You cannot have both. Simple as that. So that's what I told my product manager, because they just want things to work, right? And once again, don't throw this at every single problem. I actually said that I think that we should start light. Just do it for the main parts of the application, you know, the really, really important bits. Because you should really only scale up acceptance testing. Start light, just the important stuff, and scale it up to more parts of the system if the quality of the product goes down. Because if you're releasing stuff and it doesn't really break, then there's no reason for you to test it anymore, right? So be a little bit pragmatic and add acceptance testing when you see that, hey, the quality of our product is going down and we need a faster way to verify that nothing breaks. Hopefully this was useful to you. Have a great day.